What you're looking at here, 1930 Studebaker Erskine sedan. I got this car from a buddy of mine. Saw it posted on Marketplace, and he had it listed for like $600. I shot him a message, kind of told him I think it'd look good as yard art at my house. We laughed about it. Didn't hear anything back from him. He shot me a message back a couple weeks later actually, and said, "Hey, my wife said this has to go." So it made its way down to my place. It was originally sitting on the stock frame. Body was held together, duct tape, ratchet straps, and one piece of trim. We ended up cutting the straps, cut the duct tape, peeled the body off, or at least what was left of the body, the shell really. What it's sitting on now is the original 2/3 of the frame with a Z cut up front. It's dropped about 5.5 inches underneath. Brand new kick up in the back, fresh steel. The shell has fresh steel all the way around inside. Some of the original wood is still inside of it, which I think is pretty cool. Some of the finger joints and everything that we were able to keep and use. The roof structure is rebar, $27 worth from Lowe's as of 2024. It gives it a nice raw look. I like it. It's probably my favorite feature when it comes to the body. Really, the reason that we put this thing together was for Ratstock 2024. There was a build-off in the middle of the show for RATROD magazine. I think it's sponsored by Northern Tool out of the Quad Cities. And $5,000 budget. I think the earliest you could have started on it was November of 2023. The show was September of 2024. And so I had this thing about a month beforehand, hadn't touched it, and I said, this is as good a reason as any to build my first hot rod, rat rod project car. I've always been around classics, but this is really the first one that went front to back, full tear down, and full build. When you go to the front, what you're looking at is a 1916 Maxwell grill. Just expanded metal for the mesh. Doesn't really keep the grasshoppers out too well, but it does its job enough. Keeps the eBay or the Amazon radiator cool. Engine is out of a 68 C10 Chevy 250 inline 6. I wanted it to look period correct, being an inline 6. No engine when I first got this thing. Again, it was just a shell. So I tried to go with something I was at least familiar with, something that was reliable, didn't have to make too much power. And it definitely doesn't make too much power. That's what's nice about it. Front axle, unsure, probably a late 50s, early 60s Ford. 5-on-5.5 bolt pattern. Already had disc brakes put on it. Got that from a swap meet. I think $200. A guy was really having a hard time finding any aftermarket wheels that would fit this, which unfortunately I ran into during the build. So we just had some rusty Steelies that were on it. With some painted on white walls originally. These are for the look, or the look that I was going for was big back tire, a little bit narrower up front, just to see if it'd give the car a little bit more aggressive look, and I think we accomplished that. You move back, now we've got a turbo 350 transmission in it. Originally was a Power Glide, thought it was good to go. 2 days before the show, the Power Glide was gone. No forward gears, no reverse. Park worked just fine. That was about it. Puke transmission fluid all over the highway. So we scrambled to be able to swap something in, had to cut a bunch of floor out. Stop staring at other cars. This is the focus. So as you move back from the turbo 350 transmission, we're looking at a Ford 9-inch rear end. It came out of, I believe, a 76 or a 77 F-150. Open diff. Nothing too crazy. I think we're running 410 or 411 gears in the back, just judging by the RPMs on the engine, final drive on the transmission, tire height, everything. We really went with a taller tire in the back too, with these big old muddy ones, to try and get those RPMs down. I know these inline 6s really like the RPMs. 3,400 RPMs was a little bit much for me running it around 60 mile an hour. I felt like it was working just a little bit too hard to maintain speed on the highway. You look into the back, the gas tank, we're running actually a expansion tank for a home boiler system. So it's old school, made about 15 minutes north of here. I think sometime in the 60s. Took about 16, 17 times of flushing it and cleaning it, and we're still burning through fuel filters about once every 2.5, 3 weeks. Building this and getting it done just in the nick of time for the build off for the show over at Psycho Silo Saloon, again, Ratstock 2024. It was an absolute chore, not having any experience doing any of this before. I think 11 o'clock the night before we got ready to load it up on the trailer, I took it for one last spin around town and came in, and all of a sudden, no brakes. Squishy. Barely stopped in time to make it into the shop and not end up out the back door of the shop. Learned a couple things about bleeding brakes with a master cylinder that's down below the floor that we didn't know about before, but it ended up working out. Getting to the show, no real issues there. I know before the show, we threw in last second gauge cluster here, and the temp gauge took off and spun 3 or 4 times and was done. Digital voltmeter, so we know what we're running there. No speedometer, no tach. We just let her beller, feller. You look to the inside, we got prison bus seats, and that's not a joke. They are actually Arizona Department of Corrections prison bus seats. Stainless steel. They came out bolted together from the bus. There was a few items that we found inside of there. Magazines of the degenerate kind, and so those aren't in there anymore. But there was some candy, just some other I'm sure completely legal things to have on a prison bus. So originally the goal was to have back seats in this. When it came down to it, we started doing some measurement, and unless I wanted my knees up above my earlobes all the time, it just wasn't going to happen. So I've got my seat welded directly to the floor where I need it on brackets. Passenger seats a little bit further forward to give me some room for the shifter. Really, everything came together way easier than it should have for this car. So at Ratstock, part of the deal for the build off, one of the caveats was we went from the Psycho Silo Saloon to Northern Tool to actually the judging portion for the builders themselves and the build cars. Then another 60 miles back, this thing drove like a champ. We hoped that it wasn't going to overheat. It didn't. I think we had shoved a new water pump in 2 or 3 days before the show when the engine transmission were out. Thankfully we did, because the original water pump was full of mouse shit. It had been sitting, the engine had been sitting in a barn for a couple years after it came out of that C10, so we ended up dodging a bullet there. I think the morning after the Friday show, we were headed back over from the Airbnb, and wide open throttle downhill, probably quarter mile, half mile run. I think we got it up to around 75, 76 mile an hour. It sounds like it would be scary, and it kind of was, but after really working the bugs out and everything, at least leading up to the show, couldn't be happier with the way it ran out. Driving experience now, I don't run cushions for the seats, just straight stainless steel seats. You get some looks when people come up and check it out on the inside, but it's all part of looking the part, playing the part. Really doesn't bother me that bad. We've got trailer springs all the way around, so might seem like it would be a little bit of a rough ride. I think 49 Coronet shocks on the front. It's really not too bad. I think we ended up using maybe S10 shocks on the back. Got the travel all figured out and everything. This has just been a ton of research, trial and error, and again, it came together a whole lot easier than I think it really should have for the first build. I think the biggest problem probably was figuring out linkages, steering linkages, setting up the front axle for the correct angle, toe in, toe out, making sure nothing was offset, because there were no lasers involved with this car. This was trying to build off of a floor that wasn't level, a body that wouldn't stay together. The only way that we could get this shell onto the frame and off the frame was a 1931 hand crank elevator. So imagine a forklift, but it's all hand driven, just with gears and cables. That's how this thing came together, and that's how it looks the way that it does now. We've got a little bit of chipping back here on the windows where the forks would go through on each side, or we had 2x4s stuck across the forks coming through the back window. you make do with what you have, and that's what this entire thing has been about. One thing that you're going to notice when you look inside, obviously, no glass, no roof. If there was any changes to this car or the next build, I think this one's probably about as far as it's going to go. There's a couple floor pieces that are missing. To me, that's just some minor details. I've probably got 1,000 miles on this thing already, and I run it everywhere, either aviators or safety glasses. Passengers don't like it too much, but it doesn't really bother me. It's just like being on a motorcycle. I think though I've only caught a couple pieces of sand to the face. I know on the morning headed over to Ratstock, or headed from the show actually over to Langley, missed a grasshopper, and when it came up over the front, I saw it. It looked about the size of a grasshopper. As they got closer, it looked the size of about a candy bar, and when it went past my eyebrow, it looked about the size of a house cat. So, you have risks when you run stuff raw like this, and if you know about it, you just take it for what it is. So next build, definitely going to have glass. Real windshield glass or Lexan, plexiglass will shatter. This is definitely the most raw form of anything that we could build that's still road legal, still safe. It's got headlights, got tail lights, the doors latch, everything like that is kosher. Insurance, registration, all that jazz. But the next one needs to have a little bit more tweaks. Maybe a little bit different setup for the suspension, I think. Again, this one's not too bad running down the road at 55, 60 mile an hour, but in town, it does beat the ever-living snot out of you. There's not a lot of travel, not a lot of forgiveness on these trailer springs. They're set up for heavy weight. I think rolling across the scales, this car is probably around 2,300 pounds. I think with me and a passenger, it ends up somewhere around 2,600 pounds. So again, not hard to stop, not hard to get going. It's not going to win any drag races. That's not what it was built for. This was built to be able to actually get out and travel from show to to the bar, to the restaurant, go out to eat, show up to local car shows, all that good stuff. And it obviously gets driven, right? Again, over 1,000 miles put on it. I think it's only really quit on me once, and that was my own stupidity. I guess actually it quit on me twice. Once I ran out of fuel. There is no gas gauge. I told myself it'll be fine. Before I left town, I told myself it'll be fine when I got to the show, and I told myself it'll be fine on the way home. It was not fine on the way home. It did run out of gas. The other time actually was another fuel-related issue that we had. The tank itself, I thought, only needed a vent coming off the filler neck. Vent pressure out, let air in. Apparently, it only lets pressure out, does not let air in. The reason I know that is because it starved itself of fuel and ran it dry. As soon as I cracked open a line, fuel filter filled up, she was good to go. Run a loose cap for right now. That's one adjustment that's going to have to be made. The entire goal of building this car, one was because I've never built anything before, and obviously I wanted to have something that was worthy of going to shows. I was tired of being the guy that just took pictures and worked on cars and liked classics but never had anything to show. So first goal accomplished. Second was to actually show somebody really what you can do on a super limited budget. All in with this thing right now, I believe I'm right around $3,000. That's with a second set of rims and tires. That's fluids included. That's all the steel that was used on this. That's every piece. Some of it did get reused. Not everything on here was new. Again, the steel, had a buddy that worked at a steel place, got a little bit of discounted, or I had some scrap laying around. I wasn't afraid to ask somebody or put out there on social media, hey, does somebody have something I can use? You can't be afraid to do that. You're not going to look greedy. If you're building it for a purpose and you're a halfway decent person, people are going to want to help you. And that's totally what this thing has been about. Headlights, I think, were probably traded for a 6-pack to a buddy. Shocks are brand new. Front axle, obviously used. Engine, not a performance engine. Transmission, again, used. I think it's been rebuilt. I'm not going to trust it. I'm just going to assume that someday it's probably going to puke out if we feed her too many onions. Again, rear end came right out of a truck that was sitting on blocks. Was getting parted out. Nothing on this has been perfect. Wasn't sure if the rims would fit with the back spacing. Couldn't really do measurements because of the body. A lot of this has been luck, but a lot of it's been trust in the process, trust in the effort that it takes to put in was going to be worth it. you got to sacrifice certain things if you want your car to look a certain way. It's going to take money. If you want your car to be on a budget, you're not going to be able to have a monster V8 with a blower sticking out the top. I was okay with that. To me, it didn't have to be perfect. It just had to run. It just had to go down the road safe, had to stop. That's really all this has been about for me, at least. And it turns heads everywhere it goes. That's really the whole point to me, is to make connections. And it's been super important to let somebody know, yeah, you know, I've only got $3,000 into this thing. If you're sitting on a chunk of change, you don't have to buy a really nice car or something that, you know, has to be painted. Shiny paint causes stress. I'm 100% okay with pulling up next to somebody in a parking spot, and if they accidentally door ding it, oh well. Perfectly fine with me. It does not work to pull inside the garage and set things on the roof, though. That's probably for the best, that we'd never put a roof on it. Otherwise, I'd have shit all over it all the time. What's coming next down the pipeline, I would say, is probably the 36 Ford Coupe. And that one's going to be a little bit different style than this. This one was more the traditional looking build with, you know, the 30s 4-door body and everything. The Coupe, I've got a little bit different idea of what I want to do with it. It's probably going to be a multi video project, one step at a time, the same way that this was done. The only regret really I have with building this was I didn't keep filming throughout the entire process. Got plenty of still shots, plenty of pictures, but ultimately the next build is going to be all video content and able to follow along. So hopefully you guys stick around. Looking forward this year, the next show, at least the first show of the year, is going to be Vintage Torquefest in Dubuque. First weekend in May. We'll be there with the car. You know, stop by, say hi. Huge swap meet, tons of cars, great atmosphere. Got bands on Friday and Saturday night. It's for a Helping Hannah's Heart Foundation. Great cause. Swing out, check it out, see if it lights a fire underneath you to where you can build your own. Have a reason to, and just get it done. Don't get it right, just get it running. So appreciate you guys sticking around. Like, comment, subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. We'll keep some more cranking.